The Marquis forced the poor girl to show her dirty hands, but when he saw the ring on her finger, "Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from." The square of Tourette-sur-Loue awoke with the scent of crushed lavender and fresh bread. Stalls opened one by one, and the air filled with voices calling prices, laughter, and the creak of wooden wheels. It was the day of the annual flower fair, when even the poorest brought what they could harvest. Amid the chatter and color, Clarisse set her small basket on a crate and arranged the wildflowers she had gathered at dawn. Her hands were rough, her sleeves patched, but her smile made people stop. "Morning, Clarisse," called old Mère Poulain from the honey stall. "You'll sell every petal before noon if you keep smiling like that." "I only hope to sell enough to buy flour," Clarisse replied. She tied a ribbon around a bundle of violets and hummed softly, her voice nearly lost under the music of a traveling fiddler. The sun rose higher, warming the cobblestones. Children ran between the stalls with garlands in their hair. Clarine's flowers caught their eyes. She had a way of arranging them that made each bouquet look like it had just been plucked from a dream. Then the crowd began to part. A murmur moved through the square. A black carriage rolled in, its wheels gleaming, horses brushed to silver. The villagers lowered their voices. The herald on horseback announced, "Make way for the Marquis de Montreval." Clarine's smile faded. She had never seen him up close, only from afar when his carriage passed toward his estate. He stepped down now, tall, proud, and dressed in dark blue. At his side walked a young girl of about 8, bright-faced and delicate, with curls tied by a silk ribbon. The contrast between them was startling. The man's cold authority beside the child's lightness. "Papa," said the girl, "may I have flowers too?" "Later, Elodie," the Marquis answered, scanning the fair as though inspecting troops. His gaze swept over the stalls, the people, and finally stopped on Clarisse. He watched her for a moment, frowning slightly. Then his daughter pulled free of his hand and ran toward the flower stand. "Bonjour, mademoiselle," Clarisse said softly, kneeling so she was eye-level with the child. "Would you like a little bouquet?" "Yes, please. The blue ones smell like the sea," Elodie said, pointing. "They're forget-me-nots. They last longer if you keep them near sunlight." Clarisse wrapped a few in a piece of linen. "Take them. They'll bring joy." The child smiled, reaching out. But before her fingers touched the flowers, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Elodie!" The Marquis strode forward, his cane striking the ground. The musician stopped. Conversation ceased. "What are you doing?" "I was only—" "Enough." He turned to Clarisse. "Did you tell my daughter to take those?" "I only offered her some flowers, monsieur." The Marquis's face hardened. "You offered my child something with those hands?" He looked down at them, rough and soil-stained from the fields. "Do you think noble blood should touch peasant dirt?" A hush fell over the market. People stepped back, afraid to meet his eyes. The child clung to her father's coat. Clarisse lowered her gaze. "I meant no harm." The Marquis's voice grew louder. "No harm? You insult my family with your presumption. You forget your place." He looked at the crowd. "Shall we see what kind of purity this girl claims to have? Raise your hands, peasant, and show us the honor you work with." Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Poor thing." "Please, my lord," said Clarisse quietly. "They are not clean, but they are honest." "Raise them," he ordered. Her heart pounded. The silence was unbearable. Slowly, she lifted her hands, palms upward, fingers trembling. Mud from the morning fields marked her skin, traces of earth beneath her nails. Yet her movement was calm, almost solemn, as if she were offering them to the sky. "Higher," the Marquis said. "Let all see." She obeyed. The villagers stared, some with pity, others with curiosity. The Marquis's expression was cruelly satisfied. "There," he said. "Behold the virtue of the lower class. This is what touches what is sacred." The child whispered, "Papa, stop." He ignored her. "Let this be a lesson," he continued, raising his voice. "There is a line between those who serve and those who are born to lead." A voice from the back cried, "She's done nothing wrong." But it was quickly silenced. Clarisse stood motionless, her hands still raised. She felt the heat of shame on her face but did not lower them. "If my work offends you, my lord," she said, her voice trembling, "then it is God who must forgive me, for he made me poor." Something flickered in his eyes, uncertainty perhaps, but pride quickly buried it. "Enough. Go back to your stall, and be grateful I don't have you punished for insolence." As he turned away, a beam of sunlight cut through the clouds. It struck Clarine's hand, and something flashed, something gold, small, and unmistakably bright. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "What is that?" someone said. "Her hand, look!" another cried. The Marquis turned back. His eyes narrowed. Around Clarine's finger gleamed a ring, old and ornate, the metal worn by time. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. Clarine looked down, confused. "This? It belonged to my mother." He stepped closer, snatching her wrist before she could pull away. The villagers gasped. He studied the ring under the sunlight. His breath caught. "This crest. It cannot be." He released her as though burned. "Who gave you this ring?" "I told you. My mother. She wore it always." "Your mother's name?" "She was called Lucette." "Lucette what?" "I never knew another name. We lived alone near the hills." The Marquis took a step back, his composure cracking. He turned the ring between his gloved fingers, tracing its carved crown. His daughter looked up at him, frightened. "Papa." He didn't answer. The murmurs around them grew louder. "That's the royal seal," said a merchant. "It can't be," another whispered. "That ring was lost with the Queen's baby 20 years ago." The Marquis turned sharply toward the speaker. "Silence!" But the crowd could not be silenced now. Questions spilled through the air. Clarine looked from face to face, bewildered. "Why do you all stare? It's only a ring." The Marquis's voice was low, almost hoarse. "Girl, do you know what you wear?" She shook her head. "It was my mother's. She told me never to sell it, never to take it off." He stared at her features, the curve of her face, the grace that didn't belong to poverty. The resemblance to someone he once knew crept into his mind. The fiddler's bow dropped to the ground. The blacksmith muttered, "It's the Queen's own crest. I saw it once when I was a soldier in Paris." "Impossible," the Marquis said faintly. Clarine pulled her hand to her chest. "If it troubles you, my lord, I will hide it." "No." His voice shook. "Keep it where all may see." A tense silence followed. The wind rustled through the banners, carrying the scent of crushed flowers. The Marquis's face had turned ashen. "Did your mother ever speak of where she came from?" he asked. "She said she once worked in a noble house, long ago. Before I was born." He closed his eyes for a moment. The crowd pressed closer. Elodie clung to his sleeve. "Papa, everyone is staring. Please, let's go." He looked at his daughter, then at the peasant girl standing before him. Her chin lifted, her ring shining in the light. For the first time in years, he felt the ground shift beneath the certainty of his pride. From the far end of the square came the sudden sound of trumpets. The villagers turned. A line of soldiers on horseback appeared, their uniforms bearing the royal blue and silver of the palace guard. Dust rose behind them. "What's happening?" someone whispered. The Marquis's mouth went dry. "That insignia, it belongs to the Queen's household." The riders advanced through the square, the crowd scattering to make way. At their head rode a herald carrying a scroll tied with crimson ribbon. He dismounted before the Marquis, bowed quickly, and spoke loud enough for all to hear. "By order of Her Majesty, the bearer of the royal seal is to be brought before the throne, without delay." The villagers gasped again. All eyes turned to Clarine, who stood motionless, her hand still against her heart. The herald looked around. "Who among you carries the royal seal?" No one spoke. The only sound was the nervous shifting of feet, the flutter of banners. The Marquis's eyes met Clarine's. "Show them," he whispered. She hesitated. "I don't understand." "Show them," he said again, louder this time. "Raise your hand." She slowly extended it, and the ring gleamed once more in the sunlight. The herald stepped forward, his expression changing from authority to wonder. The crowd drew a collective breath. Some crossed themselves. Others murmured prayers. The herald spoke clearly, his voice carrying across the square. By the Queen's command, this girl is summoned to Paris. The Marquis tried to speak, but the words died in his throat. His hand trembled slightly on the head of his cane. The villagers stared at him, waiting for his reaction, for permission to believe what their eyes had seen. The herald raised the scroll and broke the royal seal. Her Majesty requests that the bearer be treated with honor and protection. Any interference shall be considered treason. The Marquis's face went white. His daughter clutched his hand, whispering, "Papa, what does it mean?" He could not answer. His mind ran through memories, rumors from long ago, whispers of a royal child lost to tragedy. Could it be? Clarine's eyes were wide, frightened, yet calm. "I am no one," she said softly. "I have no title, no family." The herald looked at her with pity. "You may soon learn otherwise, mademoiselle." The villagers began to kneel, uncertain but moved by instinct. Only the Marquis remained standing, frozen between disbelief and guilt. From the hill beyond the square came another sound, the distant roll of wheels, the clatter of horseshoes. The herald turned, eyes narrowing. "That must be them already." "Them?" the Marquis repeated. "The Queen's escort," the herald said. They were closer than expected. The crowd murmured again, turning toward the road. Dust rose over the lavender fields. A gleaming carriage appeared, bearing the golden crown of France upon its doors. Children pointed, women gasped, and men removed their hats. The Marquis stood very still. His voice was almost a whisper. Why would they come here? The herald looked uneasy. "Perhaps, my lord, because they already knew she would be found." The carriage rolled to a stop before the market square, the royal banners fluttering above the crowd. The door remained closed for a moment, heavy silence spreading through the air. Then the herald dismounted, straightened his coat, and called in a ringing voice that silenced every murmur. "By decree of Her Majesty, present the girl who bears the royal seal." The crowd held its breath as the herald's command echoed through the square. The royal carriage stood gleaming under the sunlight, its crest unmistakable. The crown of France over a field of blue. No one moved. Even the wind seemed to wait. Then the door of the carriage opened, and a man in the Queen's livery stepped down, his boots striking the cobblestones with authority. His uniform was immaculate, his face weathered by travel. "I am Captain Armand Lefebvre," he announced. "By order of Her Majesty, I come in search of the bearer of the royal seal." The villagers parted in silence. Clarine stood near her stall, pale and trembling, the ring glinting on her finger. She wanted to run, to disappear into the fields, but something in the captain's steady gaze held her still. The Marquis stepped forward, bowing stiffly. "Captain Lefebvre, you are in my domain. Explain this intrusion." The captain inclined his head with measured politeness. "My orders come from Paris, my lord. They permit no delay and no interference." "This is my village," the Marquis replied sharply. "Every matter within it falls under my authority." "Not this one," said the captain. His eyes shifted to Clarine. "Mademoiselle, may I see the ring you wear?" Clarine hesitated, her voice faint. "It belonged to my mother." "Please," the captain said, extending his gloved hand. His tone was kind but firm. "Show it to me." She stepped forward slowly. The crowd opened around her as if fearing to breathe. She slipped the ring from her finger and placed it in his palm. He turned it under the light, and his expression changed. "By the saints," he murmured. "It is true." The Marquis frowned. "You recognize it?" The captain met his eyes. "I served in the Royal Guard 20 years ago, when the Queen's first child was born. This ring was forged for the infant princess and disappeared the night she was declared dead." Gasps rippled through the square. The Marquis's daughter clutched his sleeve. "Papa, what does he mean?" He didn't answer. His jaw tightened, as if to keep his thoughts from escaping. Captain Lefebvre turned back to Clarine. "What was your mother's name?" "Lucette," she said. "She never spoke of where she came from." The captain studied her face. "Did she ever mention the court?" "She said she once worked in a noble house," Clarine replied. "She spoke of a promise she could not break." "That is all I know." The captain nodded slowly. You must come with me to the manor. The Queen's council must be informed at once. The Marquis stiffened. Surely you don't intend to take her without my consent. I intend to obey my orders, the captain said calmly. Her Majesty's command supersedes all local authority. The tension in the air thickened. The Marquis's pride warred with confusion and fear. She is a peasant. You will humiliate the crown by listening to village gossip. The captain's eyes hardened. If gossip bears the Queen's own seal, my lord, I will listen. The crowd murmured approval. The Marquis's face flushed, but he controlled himself. Very well, he said coldly. Bring her to my manor. You may conduct your inquiry there. Until further word from Paris, she is under my protection. Agreed, the captain replied. But the protection is royal, not yours. Clarisse watched them in silence. She felt like someone watching her own life from afar. The captain returned the ring to her and gestured to his men. Escort her gently, he ordered. The villagers stepped back as the soldiers formed a small procession. Clarisse glanced at her stall, the flowers still bright in the sun, and whispered, May I take them? Take what you wish, the captain said. She picked up a small bunch of violets, the same she had offered to the Marquis's daughter. Her hands shook as she climbed into the carriage. The Marquis followed on horseback, his face unreadable. As the procession left the square, voices rose behind them. Some blessed her, others crossed themselves. But most watched in silent awe, wondering if they had just witnessed the rebirth of a legend. The road to the manor wound through olive groves and fields of lavender. Inside the carriage, Clarisse sat between two guards. The captain rode beside the window. She turned to him at last. Captain Lefebvre, why does everyone stare at this ring? Because it bears a symbol no commoner should possess, he said. It belongs to the blood of kings. But my mother was poor. Perhaps, he said quietly, but the truth does not always begin where we expect. At the manor gates, servants ran to open them. The house stood solemn and grand, its stones gray against the evening sky. The Marquis dismounted and handed his reins to a stable boy. Bring her to the west drawing room, he ordered curtly. Inside, the room was lit by dozens of candles. Clarisse had never seen such splendor. Velvet drapes, gilded mirrors, portraits of ancestors staring down from the walls. It felt like another world. The captain removed his gloves and motioned for her to sit. Please, mademoiselle, no one will harm you. The Marquis paced near the fireplace. This is absurd, he muttered. A ring found on a peasant's hand and the whole court will lose its senses. The captain ignored him. Tell me, Clarisse, when did your mother die? 2 winters ago, she said. She grew weak and asked me to promise I would keep the ring. She said it would protect me. Protect you from what? She never said. Only that if anyone asked about it, I should speak the truth and nothing more. The Marquis stopped pacing. Truth, he repeated bitterly. A convenient word. Clarisse turned to him, her eyes clear. You humiliated me today, my lord, but I do not hate you. I only wish to know why this ring troubles you so. His mouth tightened. Because it should not exist. Because 20 years ago, that ring was buried with a royal child. The captain looked at him sharply. You know the story? Everyone of my rank knows it, the Marquis replied. The Queen's firstborn, said to have died at birth. But no coffin was ever opened, no body shown. Some whispered the child was taken away to hide a scandal. Fool's tales. Not all tales are false, the captain said. The Marquis stared into the fire. What will you do now? I will send word to Paris tonight, the captain answered. Her Majesty must decide. He turned to Clarisse. Until we receive her response, you will remain here. You have my word. You will be treated with respect. The Marquis's tone was cold. She will be lodged in the east wing. The servants will provide what she needs. Clarisse nodded faintly. Thank you. When the captain left to send his dispatch, the room fell silent. The Marquis stood by the window, staring into the darkness. You are fortunate, he said after a moment. Most in your place would have been punished for defiance. I never meant defiance, she replied. Only honesty. He turned to face her. Honesty can be dangerous. So can pride, she said softly. Their eyes met. For an instant, the air between them shifted. Then he turned away abruptly. Go. The servant will show you your room. She followed the maid through a corridor of portraits. The faces in the paintings seemed to watch her pass. Her room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a window overlooking the fields. When she was alone, she took the ring from her finger and studied it by candlelight. The crest gleamed faintly, 2 intertwined crowns beneath a single star. She whispered, "Who were you, mother?" That night, the manor was restless. The Marquis paced his study, reading an old family ledger. Somewhere deep in its pages, he found a record from the year the royal child had been lost. A single note written in his father's hand, "Assisted in the matter of the infant's removal. Silence must endure." He closed the book with trembling hands. At dawn, a knock came at Clarine's door. Captain Lefebvre entered, carrying a sealed envelope. "A message from Paris," he said. "The Queen herself has written." She took it hesitantly. "What does it say?" "The letter is addressed to me," he said, breaking the seal. His eyes scanned the lines and he exhaled slowly. "Her Majesty requests that you be brought to the capital immediately." Clarine's breath caught. "To Paris?" "Yes. You will leave within the hour." The Marquis appeared in the doorway. "So soon?" "The Queen insists," the captain said. "She has written that the bearer of the royal seal must be presented before her while her strength allows." The Marquis frowned. "Is she ill?" "She is," the captain replied. "Gravely." He turned to Clarine. "Gather your things. We ride at once." Servants hurried through the halls. The Marquis followed them outside, his face unreadable. When the carriage was ready, he spoke to the captain. "I will accompany you to Paris." "That is not required," said the captain. "It is my duty," the Marquis insisted. "This affair began under my roof. I will see it through." Clarine climbed into the carriage, her basket of flowers on her lap. The Marquis mounted his horse and took position beside them. As the gates opened, she looked back at the manor that had once seemed unreachable. Now it felt like a cage she was leaving behind. They rode north through fields glistening with morning dew. Villagers watched from doorways as the royal escort passed. Some waved. Others whispered blessings. Clarine kept her eyes on the horizon, afraid of what waited beyond it. Captain Lefebvre rode alongside her window. "Do not be afraid," he said. "The Queen is known for her mercy." "I am not afraid of her," she answered. "I am afraid of what she will see in me." He nodded quietly. "Perhaps she will see herself." Behind them, the Marquis rode in silence, the reins tight in his hands. He could not forget the look in the girl's eyes, neither defiant nor humble, but clear, as though she had been born for something greater than poverty. As the sun rose higher, the first milestone appeared, 30 leagues to Paris. The captain signaled for a brief rest. They stopped by a stream. Clarine stepped down, her skirt brushing the grass. The Marquis approached her, his expression unreadable. "You still think yourself a peasant," he said. "I am one. Perhaps not for long." She looked at him steadily. "If what you fear is true, what will it change?" "Everything," he said. "For you, for France, and for me." Before she could reply, a rider appeared in the distance, galloping hard. The captain recognized the uniform and went to meet him. The messenger handed him another sealed dispatch. The captain broke the wax, read quickly, and turned pale. "What news?" the Marquis demanded. "The Queen's condition worsens," the captain said. "We must reach Paris within 2 days, or it may be too late." He looked at Clarine. "Her Majesty waits for you. We ride without rest." The carriage door slammed shut. The horses leapt forward, and the procession moved on, dust swirling behind them. As the road curved toward the northern hills, thunder rumbled in the distance. The sky darkened, and rain began to fall. The soldiers pulled their cloaks tight, urging the horses faster. Inside the carriage, Clarine held the ring against her heart, feeling the metal's warmth through her palm. The Marquis rode close beside the window, water streaming from his hat. He glanced in and saw her lips moving in prayer. For the first time he felt not superiority but unease, a sense that fate itself had turned to judge him. By nightfall they reached the outskirts of Lyon and took shelter in an inn. The captain sent a courier ahead to clear the way through the royal checkpoints. The Marquis sat near the fire, staring into the flames. Clarine sat across from him, her hands folded. "Will she truly see me?" she asked softly. "She will," said the captain. "The queen never breaks her word." The Marquis's gaze lifted. "And if she claims you as her own?" Clarisse hesitated. "Then I will thank her for the gift of truth and ask her to let me go home." He frowned. "You would refuse a crown? I want peace, not power." He said nothing more. The fire crackled between them, throwing their shadows against the wall. When dawn broke, they rode again, the rain gone, but the clouds low and gray. The road to Paris stretched ahead like a ribbon of destiny. None spoke much. Even the captain seemed subdued. As the towers of the capital came into view 2 days later, the captain received another dispatch from a waiting officer. He read it in silence, then handed it to the Marquis. The Marquis's eyes widened. "Is this true?" "Yes," the captain said grimly. "The queen is dying. She may not survive the night." Clarisse clutched the ring, her breath quickening. "We must hurry." The captain spurred his horse. The carriage jolted forward. The gates of Paris loomed ahead, guarded by royal soldiers. As they reached the entrance, a commander stepped out, raising his hand to stop them. "The Marquis de Montreval," he said. "By order of the council, you are under investigation for concealing the royal child 20 years ago." The Marquis froze. "What accusation is this?" "Your family's name appears in the Queen's record," the commander replied. "Until Her Majesty confirms the truth, you will not pass these gates." The captain dismounted. "This man rides under royal escort. You will not delay us." But the commander shook his head. "Orders are orders." Rain began to fall again, light but cold. Clarisse leaned from the carriage window, her voice clear and frightened. "Please, let him through. He has done nothing wrong." The commander hesitated, torn between duty and compassion. Behind him, the city bells began to toll, slow and heavy. The captain turned toward the gates, his voice urgent. "We have no time to argue. The queen is dying." Rain streamed down the cobblestones, pooling beneath the horses' hooves as thunder rolled across the gray Paris sky. The royal gates loomed before them, tall and guarded, the emblem of the crown carved above the archway. Captain Lefebvre rode forward, his voice steady but urgent. "By order of Her Majesty, open the gates. The Queen commands the bearer of the royal seal be brought to her at once." The commander hesitated. "I have orders from the council, Captain. No one accused of treason or connected to the Montreval family is to enter until the Queen herself confirms permission." "Then let her confirm it in person," Lefebvre snapped. "She has summoned this girl, and she is dying even as we speak. Do you wish to answer for her last breath if she asks why you delayed us?" The guard wavered. Rain slid down his armor. "I serve the crown, Captain. If you give your word, you have it," Lefebvre said sharply. "On my honor as a soldier." The commander raised his hand. "Open the gates." The iron creaked, and the procession moved forward. The carriage rolled through, the horse's breath steaming in the cold air. Inside, Clarisse clutched her small bundle of violets, her heart beating so fast she could hardly breathe. Beside the carriage, the Marquis de Montreval rode silently, water dripping from his cloak. He had not spoken since the accusation. His face was pale, his thoughts hidden behind the same proud mask that had once humiliated her in the square. Yet his hands trembled slightly on the reins. As the gates closed behind them, the noise of Paris rose, a city alive even under storm clouds. Merchants shouted from covered stalls, carriages clattered on wet stone, and church bells tolled for the Queen's illness. The royal escort cut through the streets, citizens bowing as the crest of the crown passed by. They reached the great square before the palace. Lanterns burned at every archway, the guards standing double in their posts. Captain Lefebvre dismounted first and opened the carriage door. "We are here," he said softly. Clarisse stepped out, her shoes splashing in puddles. She looked up at the towering facade of the palace, its windows like eyes watching her approach. "Stay close," the captain murmured. "The court is restless. They will not welcome surprises." The Marquis joined them, his voice low. "Captain, I must speak with the Queen's secretary. These accusations against my family—" "You will speak when Her Majesty commands it," Lefebvre said, without looking at him. Not before. Inside the palace, the corridors glowed with candlelight. Nobles and servants moved in silence, their faces drawn with tension. A faint scent of incense lingered in the air. The sound of distant weeping echoed from behind a door. An elderly woman in mourning black approached them. Her keys clinked softly as she walked. "You are the escort from Provence?" "Yes," said the captain. "Her Majesty is very weak," the woman said, "but she will see the girl." Clarisse lowered her eyes. "Madame, I am no one of importance. Please, hush, child," the woman interrupted gently. "The Queen herself named you. That is importance enough." They followed her through the grand hallway. The tapestries along the walls showed scenes of kings and battles, but Clarisse barely noticed. She saw only the polished floor reflecting the candlelight and felt the pounding of her heart in her chest. The woman stopped before a set of gilded doors and turned to Captain Lefebvre. "Only she may enter," she said. "Her Majesty has asked for privacy." Lefebvre nodded. "Wait for my signal," he told the Marquis quietly. "Do not speak unless you are called." The doors opened, and Clarisse stepped inside alone. The air was warm and still, scented with roses and medicine. At the far end of the chamber, the Queen lay in a high bed, her hair silver against the pillows, her face pale but serene. A few courtiers stood nearby, whispering prayers. When Clarisse approached, the Queen's eyes opened slowly. They were a faded blue, yet sharp, filled with recognition the instant they fell upon the girl. "Come closer," she said in a frail voice. Clarisse obeyed. The Queen reached out a trembling hand. "Child, let me see your face." Clarisse knelt beside the bed. The Queen touched her cheek lightly, her fingers tracing the curve of her jaw, the shape of her brow. A tear welled in her eye. "You are the image of her," she whispered. "Of whom, Your Majesty?" "Of myself when I was young." The courtiers stirred uneasily, but the Queen continued, her voice gaining strength. "The night you were born, they told me you were dead. They took you from me before I could even hold you. I wept for years, believing my child lost." Clarine's breath caught. "You think I am your daughter?" "I do not think, child," the Queen said. "I know. Show me your right hand." Clarisse hesitated, then extended her hand. The Queen turned it gently, her gaze falling on a small mark beneath the wrist, a faint birthmark shaped like a star. "There," the Queen whispered, tears falling freely now. "The sign of our line. You are mine." Gasps filled the chamber. The courtiers exchanged stunned glances. One of them, a tall man in silk, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this is impossible. There was never proof." The Queen silenced him with a gesture. "Proof lies before you. The ring she bears, the mark she carries, the blood in her face. Let no one doubt it." Clarisse could barely speak. "Your Majesty, I am a peasant. My mother, your mother was loyal beyond measure," the Queen said. "She was entrusted with your life. She fled the palace the night the traitors sought to destroy you. She saved you from death and vanished into the countryside. I searched for her until the end of my strength." The chamber fell silent, except for the faint crackle of the hearth. At that moment, Captain Lefebvre entered quietly, followed by the Marquis. He bowed low. "Your Majesty, the court awaits your word. What is to be done?" The Queen's eyes moved to the Marquis. Her expression darkened. "Marquis de Montreval." "Your father's name appears in the record of that night." The Marquis bowed, his voice trembling for the first time. "Majesty, I learned only recently that my father was involved. I swear I knew nothing. I beg your pardon." The Queen studied him in silence. "You humiliated my daughter before your people." He lowered his head. "I did not know who she was. My pride blinded me. I deserve her contempt." Clarisse shook her head. "No, Your Majesty. He has been harsh, but he has also protected me since." The Queen smiled faintly. "Even in humility you defend him. You have your mother's heart." The Marquis looked at her in disbelief. "Your Majesty, will you condemn me for my father's sin?" "I will not condemn," she said softly. "But you will carry the burden of his name with repentance." He bowed again, his voice breaking. "I accept it. The queen's strength was fading. Her hand trembled as she took Clarine's. "Listen to me, my child. The crown will be yours one day. But power means nothing without mercy. Promise me you will forgive, even those who have wronged you." Clarine wept silently. "I promise." The queen smiled through her tears. "Then my soul will rest." Her hand went still in Clarine's grasp. The court fell to its knees. A priest whispered prayers. The queen's eyes closed, her lips curving into a faint smile as her breath left her body. Clarine bowed her head against the queen's hand, her tears falling on the royal crest embroidered on the sheets. Captain Lefebvre stepped forward, his voice solemn. "Her Majesty has joined the saints." The Marquis sank to one knee, his expression hollow. "God forgive us all." For a long moment no one spoke. Then the tall courtier broke the silence. "What of the girl?" he demanded. "If she truly is the queen's daughter, she is now Princess Clarisse of France. The council must decide her future." The captain turned to Clarine. "You are no longer a peasant, mademoiselle. You are heir to the crown." She rose slowly, her face pale but resolute. "I ask no crown," she said. "I ask only to honor her memory." The courtier frowned. "That is not yours to decide." The Marquis stepped forward. "Let her speak. She has earned that right." His voice was firm now, stripped of arrogance. The courtiers fell silent again. Clarine turned to him, her eyes filled with quiet strength. "You once made me raise my hands to shame me," she said softly. "Now I raise them to forgive." The Marquis bowed deeply. "You are more noble than any of us, Princess." Captain Lefebvre laid a hand on her shoulder. "There will be time for mourning later. The city waits for the Queen's passing to be announced. For now, you must rest. Tomorrow the council will meet to confirm your birthright." She nodded faintly. "And what will become of him?" She looked toward the Marquis. The captain hesitated. "That depends on what the records reveal." The Marquise met her gaze. "Whatever comes, I will not hide from it." The captain led her from the chamber. The palace was silent now, the news of the Queen's death spreading like wind through corridors. Servants knelt as she passed, whispering blessings. Outside, the storm had eased. The first pale light of dawn touched the palace roof, glimmering on the wet stone. In her new chambers, Clarine sat by the window, staring at the city below. Bells began to toll, slow and mournful, announcing the Queen's passing. A knock sounded. The Marquis entered quietly. He looked weary, his cloak still damp. "I came to ask forgiveness once more," he said. She turned to him. "You have it. Twice over." He hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "There are things I must confess. My father's journal. I found it. It speaks of the night you were taken. He helped those who plotted your disappearance. I am ashamed." "Then you too were a victim of his deeds," she said gently. "The sins of the past must not bind the living." He bowed his head. "You speak as your mother once did. I remember her. She was a maid in my father's house before she vanished. She must have fled to save you." Clarine's eyes filled with tears. "You knew her? I was a boy," he said. "I remember her kindness." She smiled faintly. "Then we are both children of what was lost." Before he could reply, the door burst open. Captain Lefebvre entered, his face grave. "The council has gathered," he said. "They demand the Marquis be placed under guard until the matter of his family's treachery is resolved." Clarine rose. "He will not be treated as a criminal. He has repented. I have no authority to refuse," the captain said. "But I can delay." The Marquis straightened. "No, Captain. I will face whatever judgment awaits. My guilt is inherited, and I must answer for it." He turned to Clarine. "If you never see me again, remember that your courage redeemed more than my name." Tears welled in her eyes, but she said nothing as soldiers entered and led him away. When they were gone, the captain looked at her with quiet sympathy. "Sometimes fate offers us love and takes it away before we can name it." She looked out the window at the rain-soaked city. "Perhaps it will return when the storm has passed." As if answering her, a trumpet sounded from the courtyard below. Another messenger rode in under the gate, his banner torn by wind. He shouted to the guards, his voice carrying through the dawn air. "Urgent news for the Royal Council! The Queen's will has been found!" The palace bells tolled through the mist of early morning, their sound deep and slow, echoing over the roofs of Paris. Servants hurried along the corridors, courtiers whispered behind doors, and guards changed posts with somber faces. The Queen's death had thrown the court into mourning, but her final command, the discovery of her will, had stirred something else. Expectation. In the antechamber of the Royal Council, Captain Lefebvre waited beside Clarine, now formally addressed as Princess Clarisse. Her hands were clasped, the royal ring glinting faintly under the lamplight. Though she wore a gown sent from the wardrobe of the late Queen, her posture still carried the simplicity of the flower girl she had been only days before. Across the hall, voices rose and fell, the nobles arguing over protocol, inheritance, and influence. Clarisse barely heard them. Her thoughts rested on the Marquis, held in a chamber under gentle guard somewhere within the palace. He had not protested his arrest, nor asked for mercy. That silence troubled her more than his former arrogance. The doors opened. A secretary bowed. "The council is ready, Your Highness." Lefebvre murmured, "Stand tall. Whatever they say, remember who you are." She nodded and entered. Inside, the room gleamed with candlelight, reflecting from gilt mirrors and polished floors. The highest ministers of France sat in semicircle around the council table, their black robes trimmed in silver. At the head stood the Archbishop of Paris, holding a sealed parchment bound with crimson ribbon. Clarisse curtsied deeply. The Archbishop motioned for her to rise. "Your Highness," he said solemnly, "this council has gathered to fulfill the late Queen's last will and testament, found this morning within her private chapel." He broke the seal, unrolled the parchment, and began to read. "I, Marguerite, by the grace of God, Queen of France, declare that my firstborn child, known to the court as lost, yet living by providence, shall inherit not only my title and possessions, but the compassion with which this realm was once ruled. To her, I entrust forgiveness for all who erred in ignorance or pride. To her, I grant freedom to choose her own path, for love, not duty, shall define her reign." A murmur spread through the council. The Archbishop raised his voice. "Her Majesty also commands that no punishment be carried out upon the House of Montreval, whose past sins, though grievous, are absolved by her in mercy." Clarisse drew a quick breath. "She forgave him?" The Archbishop nodded. "It is written plainly, Your Highness." The ministers exchanged glances. One of them, an austere man with powdered hair, spoke sharply. "This will overturn years of precedent. A peasant raised in obscurity cannot be presented as heir without the Parliament's confirmation." Captain Lefebvre stepped forward. "Her Majesty's command is absolute. The Queen herself declared this girl her daughter in the presence of witnesses. That is law." Another minister rose. "The people will question it. They will demand proof." Clarisse lifted her chin. "Then they shall see it, not through blood or crown, but through what I do for them. My mother's word is my proof." Her calm voice silenced the chamber. The Archbishop bowed slightly. "Then, by decree of the late Queen, and with the assent of this council, you shall be known henceforth as Princess Clarisse of France, rightful daughter of Marguerite." Lefebvre smiled faintly, but Clarisse did not return it. "And the Marquis?" she asked. "The same will that crowns you also frees him," the Archbishop replied. "He is pardoned of his father's crime." She turned to Lefebvre. "Then I must see him." He inclined his head. "Follow me." They left the council chamber and crossed the marble corridor toward the west wing. Guards stepped aside as they passed. Rain still fell softly beyond the high windows, blurring the city below. When they reached the chamber, Lefebvre unlocked the door and stood aside. The Marquis sat near the window, his posture straight but his face worn by sleeplessness. When he saw her, he rose at once. "Your Highness." She shook her head. "Do not call me that. Not when I owe you truth." He hesitated. "I expected you would come to accuse me. Instead, I came to release you," she said. "The Queen has forgiven your house. Her will names you free of guilt." He stared at her, disbelief shadowing his eyes. "She forgave me? After what I did to you?" To her memory. "She forgave all," Clarisse said softly. "It is what she desired for her reign. And for mine." The Marquis's voice broke. "I do not deserve it." Neither did I deserve her love, yet she gave it, she replied. You once said honesty can be dangerous. I will risk it now. I pity you, but I also respect the man you are becoming. He looked down, his voice low. You shame me with kindness. I hope I teach you with it, she answered. Lefebvre stepped into the doorway. The council will expect you both at the morning service this afternoon. The Marquis nodded, then turned back to her. If I may, Princess, when this service is over, I will leave Paris. My estate will be turned to charity. I have no wish to keep what pride built upon deceit. Her eyes filled with emotion. If you leave, do it not as exile, but as redemption. He bowed deeply. I will remember your words. The afternoon passed beneath a grey sky. The cathedral was filled with nobles, clergy, and citizens, all dressed in mourning black. The air smelled of wax and rain. Clarisse walked behind the Queen's coffin, her steps steady, the people watching in reverent silence. As the choir sang, she felt a hand brush her sleeve. It was Captain Lefebvre. The people bow to you, he whispered. They see her spirit in you. I am not her, she said. Not yet, he replied. When the service ended, the Archbishop led her to the front of the cathedral. Address them, Princess, he urged. She faced the gathered crowd, her voice carrying through the arches. My mother taught that the strength of France lies not in its throne, but in the mercy of its heart. Today I stand before you not as ruler, but as her daughter, born among you, raised by your labor, and forever bound to your trust. Let there be no more walls between us. A murmur rose, then applause. Soft at first, then growing until the sound filled the nave. Even the nobles bowed their heads. Later, back in the palace, Clarisse stood by the window overlooking the courtyard. The torches below flickered in the wind. Lefebvre entered quietly. The Marquis has left the cathedral. He asked that I give you this. He handed her a folded letter sealed with wax. She broke it and read silently. The words were simple. Forgiveness is heavier to carry than guilt, but it leads the heart home. If ever you wish to see the flowers bloom again where pride once stood, come to Provence. She closed the letter, her eyes bright with tears. He is gone. He will return, Lefebvre said. Some bonds do not end with distance. Days passed. The council settled the Queen's affairs. The court prepared for the proclamation of the new princess, and the city mourned and celebrated in equal measure. Clarisse moved through it all with quiet composure, fulfilling her duties, but longing for silence. She often walked in the Queen's garden, where roses climbed over marble statues and fountains murmured softly. There she spoke aloud to the memory of the woman she had just lost. One evening, as she walked among the flowers, Lefebvre approached again. The council insists you take residence at Versailles. They mean to crown you formally before the end of the month. She looked away. And if I refuse, they will not understand. Then let them learn, she said. I was born a peasant, raised in the dust of the fields. I have no wish to rule from marble halls. My heart belongs where life begins, in the soil. The captain smiled sadly. You sound more like a shepherdess than a princess. Perhaps France needs both, she answered. The next morning she announced her decision to the council. She would retire temporarily to Provence, to the village of her birth, to fulfill her mother's last command, to forgive not only others, but herself. The council protested, but her calm authority silenced them. Within days, the royal carriage was prepared again. As she departed the palace, crowds gathered along the streets. They bowed as she passed, tossing petals onto the wet stones. Clarisse leaned from the carriage window, her voice clear. Keep your faith in kindness, and France will not falter. The people cheered softly, their faces lit with hope rather than fear. The journey south was quiet. The fields of her childhood rolled out before her, golden under the spring sun. Each mile seemed to lift a weight from her heart. When at last she reached the hills of Tourette-sur-Loue, she saw smoke rising gently from the chimneys, the village unchanged. Children ran to greet the carriage, shouting her name. Princess! The flower girl, Princess! She smiled and stepped down onto the familiar cobblestones. The same square where her humiliation had begun now shimmered with garlands and laughter. Yet what drew her attention most was the sight of the old market stall, no longer broken, but rebuilt with care. An elderly woman approached, curtsying deeply. "Welcome home, Your Highness." The Marquis repaired the stall himself, said it must be ready should you ever return. Clarisse's heart quickened. "Where is he now?" "At the manor on the hill. He turned it into a school for the children. You'll find him there at this hour." She thanked the woman and walked up the path through the fields. Lavender brushed her skirts, filling the air with scent. The manor, once forbidding, now looked simple, its gates open. Children's laughter rang from inside. At the door she paused, hearing his voice through the open window, teaching letters to a boy. It was gentle, steady, the voice of a man transformed. When he turned and saw her standing there, he froze. The book slipped from his hand. "Your Highness," he whispered. She stepped closer. "Still calling me that? I thought it was what you wished." "I wish for truth," she said. "You once told me honesty can be dangerous. It is also all I have." He bowed his head. "Then I will be honest. I thought you would never return. I promised my mother I would forgive," she said. "That forgiveness includes you." He looked up, his eyes dark with emotion. "I have tried to atone, but the past does not easily loosen its grip." "Then let it go," she said simply. "Let it end here." For a long moment neither spoke. Outside, the sound of bells drifted from the village church, soft and clear. The children peered from the doorway, smiling. Clarisse turned toward them, her voice light. "Go on, play. Your lessons can wait for Joy." They laughed and ran outside, leaving the two alone. The Marquis stepped closer, uncertain. "Will you stay?" "I do not know," she said. "Paris expects a princess, but perhaps France needs only a woman who remembers where she came from." He smiled faintly. "Then stay as you are. That is more than any crown could offer." She looked out the window toward the hills, where lavender swayed in the breeze. "Maybe this is what my mother meant, to rule by heart, not by throne." His gaze softened. "And what does your heart tell you now?" Her answer was a whisper. "That I have come home." From the valley below came the faint sound of wheels and horses, the distant rumble of an approaching carriage. Clarisse turned her head, puzzled. "Who could that be?" she asked. The Marquis moved to the door, peering down the road. The carriage carried the royal crest, banners fluttering bright in the afternoon sun. "It's from Paris," he said quietly. "They must have followed you here." The carriage climbed the hill, its driver shouting to clear the way. When it stopped before the manor, a messenger stepped down, breathless, holding a sealed parchment marked with the royal seal of the council. He bowed deeply before Clarisse and said, "Your Highness, you are commanded to return to Paris at once. The nation awaits your coronation." Clarisse stood still as the messenger finished speaking, his words hanging in the quiet air. The golden seal of the royal council glimmered against the parchment in his hand. For a moment, she said nothing. The children playing nearby had gone silent, the Marquis watching her from a few steps away. The scent of lavender drifted between them. "You are commanded to return to Paris at once," the messenger repeated softly, bowing his head. Clarisse looked down at the seal, then at the Marquis. His face was calm, but she saw the flicker of pain in his eyes, the kind that came from knowing one must lose something precious. "Paris awaits its princess," he said quietly. "And you?" she asked. He hesitated. "I will remain here. The village still needs me. My work is not finished." Her voice was low. "You have rebuilt everything except your own heart." He smiled faintly. "That is not mine to rebuild." The messenger bowed again. "Your Highness, the council expects you within 3 days. I am to escort you back." "Then you will wait until morning," she said. "I have 1 night left to remember where I came from." The man bowed and retreated to the carriage. The sound of hooves faded down the path. Clarisse turned back toward the manor. The Marquis still stood by the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Will you walk with me?" she asked. He bowed his head. "If you command it." "I never command," she said softly. "I ask." They walked down the hill together, side by side, through the lavender fields. The sun had begun to set, painting the horizon in pale gold. The hum of bees and the distant sound of the river filled the quiet between them. "I used to dream of this path when I was a child," she said. I would follow it, and imagine that beyond the next hill I might find someone waiting for me. Did you ever find them? She smiled faintly. Not until the day I was humiliated in this very village. His step faltered. You should not remind me of that. I must, she said. Because that day changed everything. If you had not shamed me, I would never have raised my hands. The ring would have remained hidden, and I would still be selling flowers. He looked at her in disbelief. You forgive too easily. Perhaps forgiveness is not easy, she said. Perhaps it is only love wearing a simpler name. He turned his gaze to the fields. You speak as your mother did. She once told my father that a man who cannot forgive is a servant to his own pride. Then you are free now, she said. He stopped walking, his voice low. Am I? Yes, she said, facing him. You have atoned enough. The world no longer holds you in chains. He looked at her for a long moment. And what of you? You will be a queen soon. The chains will be yours. She shook her head. Only if I let them. They continued walking until they reached the small bridge that crossed the stream. The water shimmered in the fading light. Clarisse leaned against the railing, her reflection mingling with the sky. Do you remember the fair? She asked suddenly. I remember every moment, he said. I remember your voice, your silence, and the courage you showed when all others would have wept. I did weep, she said softly. Just not where you could see. He lowered his eyes. If I could take back that day. You cannot, she said gently. But you can change every day that follows. He nodded. That is all I try to do. The sun slipped below the hills, leaving a quiet glow over the fields. She turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. Will you come to Paris with me? He looked startled. As what? As yourself, she said simply. You once told me nobility is not born of titles but of truth. Come as the man you are now. He hesitated. I would not belong there. Neither did I, she said. Yet they call me Princess. He smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. If I went, I would be tempted to hope for things beyond my reach. She stepped closer. Hope is not forbidden. He drew a slow breath, his eyes on hers. Clarisse, do you know what you ask of me? You are the daughter of a queen. I am the son of a man who betrayed her. Then let our lives be the end of that story, she said. Let forgiveness be the heir to the past. He took her hand, his voice low. You offer peace where I expected nothing but pity. She smiled. Peace was my mother's last command. She wished me to love freely. I believe she meant you. He stared at her, as though the world had stopped around them. You would choose me? I already did, she said. He closed his eyes, struggling with the weight of emotion. Clarisse, if I touch you, it will not be as a subject to a sovereign. Then touch me as a man to a woman, she whispered. The evening wind stirred her hair as his hands found hers. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the sound of the stream filling the space between their hearts. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled. I do not deserve this. No one does, she said. That is what makes it real. He drew her closer, not daring at first, as though still afraid to break some invisible rule. But when she looked up at him, there was no distance left to cross. The kiss came not as conquest, but as surrender, quiet and steady, like two lives learning to breathe again. When they parted, she whispered, Now I know what forgiveness feels like. He smiled through the wetness in his eyes. And I know what redemption means. The sound of the church bells rose from the village below, soft and clear. The night was falling, and lanterns glowed along the distant path. We should return, he said quietly. The messenger will grow impatient. Let him wait, she answered. They walked back toward the manor under the rising moon. The children had gone home. The windows glimmered with candlelight. When they reached the steps, she turned to him again. If I go to Paris, it will not be to wear a crown. It will be to serve those who cannot speak for themselves. He nodded. You will change France. I will only remind it of its heart, she said. But I cannot do it alone. He hesitated. If you ask me to stand beside you, I will not refuse. But I must know. Would it be duty or love? She stepped closer. You already know. The door opened behind them. Captain Lefebvre appeared, bowing respectfully. Your Highness, the carriage is ready for morning. The messenger has arranged quarters for you tonight. Clarisse smiled faintly. Thank you, Captain. And what of the Marquis? He will remain here unless you command otherwise. She looked at Lefebvre steadily. Then prepare 2 rooms. In Paris, the captain's expression softened. As you wish. When he had gone, the Marquis looked at her in disbelief. You would bring me into the world that scorns me? I would bring you into the world that needs you, she said. You have known pride, guilt, and humility. You understand both sides of the world I must govern. He exhaled slowly. And if they refuse me? They will not, she said, because I will not. That night, the village slept under a sky full of stars. Clarisse lay awake, hearing the distant murmur of the wind through the lavender fields. For the first time in her life, the future did not frighten her. Before dawn, she rose and dressed simply, as she used to when she was a flower girl. She walked outside to the fields, gathering a handful of blossoms. When she returned, the Marquis was already waiting by the carriage, his coat brushed, his expression calm but uncertain. You're awake early, he said. I wanted to bring something from here, she replied, holding up the flowers. Paris will need their scent, he smiled. So will I. They rode north together, Captain Lefebvre leading the escort. The road stretched long before them, bordered by orchards and villages waking to the morning light. The air was fresh, full of promise. For the first few hours, they spoke little. Then the Marquis said quietly, When I first saw you, I thought you were only a reflection of everything my world despised. And now? Now I see you as the reason my world exists. She turned toward him, her eyes bright. Then we have both learned. As the carriage rolled through the countryside, people gathered along the road, waving and cheering for the returning princess. Children threw flowers in her path. But Clarisse leaned out the window and spoke to them in the same gentle tone she had used at the market years before. These flowers are yours, she called. They belong to France. The Marquis watched her, admiration softening his face. You were born for this, he said. I was born to love, she answered. The rest came later. By evening they reached the outskirts of Paris. The city bells rang again, not for mourning this time, but for hope. The palace gates opened, lined with guards and nobles. The carriage stopped at the marble steps where Clarisse had once entered, trembling with fear. Now she stepped down with quiet strength, the Marquis beside her. Captain Lefebvre bowed. Your Highness, the council awaits you in the grand hall. Then let them wait a little longer, she said. I have something to do first. She turned to the Marquis. Do you remember what you said to me the day we left the village for Paris? That you would follow only if it was truth, not duty. He nodded slowly. I remember. Then follow me now, she said. They entered the grand hall together. The council members rose as she approached. The Archbishop stepped forward, smiling faintly. Your Highness, the people await your coronation. All France watches. Then let France witness this as well, she said clearly. She turned to the Marquise. The Queen commanded me to rule with mercy and to choose love freely. I choose it now. A murmur rippled through the court. The Marquis looked stunned. Clarisse, she took his hand. You once made me raise my hands for shame. Today I raise them for joy. Will you take them, not as a penance, but as a promise? He bowed his head, his voice trembling. I will, if the world allows it. She smiled. The world will follow what it sees. The Archbishop lifted his staff. If it is the wish of France's princess, let her will be honored. The nobles bowed. The choir began to sing, soft at first, then swelling, as if the very air rejoiced. Clarisse turned to the Marquis, her eyes shining. Then let us begin again. He drew her close, the crowd parting as though before a blessing. Their hands intertwined, the same hands once divided by pride, now united by grace. Outside, the city erupted in celebration. Bells rang from every tower, echoing through the streets. The people shouted her name, throwing petals into the air. Clarisse looked up at him, her voice steady and full of light. Do you hear it? Yes, he said. It is the sound of forgiveness. She smiled, tears in her eyes. No, my love. It is the sound of freedom. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.